Hi, and welcome to week 11 of EDC 420. This week, we are beginning our first of several weeks looking at assessment in relation to second language acquisition. We have a full week with lots of different content for you to engage with around this topic, some of which I imagine and hope will be review for some of you as we'll be talking about kind of some basic components of assessments in general and different ways to approach assessment. And then we'll move very specifically to think about assessing MLLs and assessing language learners and different considerations around that topic. To begin, I have recorded a short video for you where I overview the standardized assessment critique paper. I know you're just coming off of the second case study paper, so this isn't meant to overwhelm you right away, but just to kind of have it give you an overview of what the paper is so that you can begin to think about it as we move into the last section of our course. So this is the final paper for the class. You have several weeks before it is due, but to start kind of thinking about what assessment you might focus on and some of the considerations you might bring to your critique and assessment. Critique and analysis. So you'll start by looking at that video, and I've given you the link for the description and rubric. From there, we begin to engage with this week's content. We're going to start with, as I mentioned, just kind of building some background about assessment and assessing language learners. There's a few key terms that I want to make sure everybody understands, which are reliability and validity, two really important concepts when we think about assessment. And then in the chapter you'll read from Herrera and colleagues, you'll think about authenticity, what it means for an assessment to be authentic. And they give many, many examples of what that looks like in practice. There are some lecture videos to accompany that reading, and then we move toward thinking about what it means to embrace a multilingual or heteroglossic approach to assessment. And both of those terms are really trying to get at this idea of moving beyond viewing our bilingual and multilingual students from a monolingual lens when we assess them. So how do we take this translanguaging perspective or a multilingual perspective, or what some call a heteroglossic perspective, and bring that to assessment and how we evaluate what students know and understand and what they can do. And so for this section, we'll begin with a brief lecture video by way of introduction, and then you have two readings, one from Margot Gottlieb's book, where she provides a framework for assessing multilingual learners in a way that embraces translanguaging, and an article from Nelson Flores and Jamie Shizzle, where they talk about what it would mean to embrace dynamic bilingualism as the norm. And they approach that from a few different perspectives, both historically, they give you some context for how monolingualism became the norm and how it has been perpetuated through the standards-based reform movement that we're currently living in. And then they show a couple case studies of teachers trying to move towards a more heteroglossic approach. And they also offer a nice and critical analysis of the Common Core state standards from that perspective. And I think that article in particular will give you some strong ideas of different lenses you can bring to your standardized assessment critique paper. I've also included a short teacher video in that section in which a teacher talks about kind of a translanguaging approach that she uses that has informed her instruction, but also her assessment of what her students can do. From there, we dive deeper into kind of the practicality, looking at some specific language assessments, standardized language assessments. And we're focusing in this week more closely on the WIDA access test, because that is the English language assessment that is used by most states in the US when it comes to assessing English language proficiency for MLLs. It is the test that we use in Rhode Island, although I've provided some links for other language assessment websites so that you can explore some of the other ways that English language proficiency is assessed, and also Spanish language proficiency and other languages for those of you who teach in bilingual contexts or world language contexts. So hopefully you'll feel like you have a sense for what these tests are and some of the ways that they approach assessing language proficiency. Then we move towards our reflecting and applying section. So you will have a few different questions that you can respond to, and then we'll have an application activity in which you'll be watching a student interview and using a tracking sheet to think about how this student interview is one type of assessment can give you some information about a learner. And last but not least, we have another praxis quiz. So go ahead and find that under the quizzes tab. And remember, you can take it and retake it as many times as you would like before this week's window closes. Again, as a way to practice for the test and just kind of get used to the style of questions that they ask. So that is our very full and exciting week. I hope you have a wonderful time engaging with the content. And I know a lot of you will bring some prior knowledge to this week, and I look forward to seeing how you already think about assessment, and then ways that this week's content and application activities and discussion help move your thinking forward. That's it for now. Bye.